Hey guys, imagine the creak of a floorboard at midnight and the musty scent of old paper that's been hidden in a grandparent's attic like a secret spilling time bomb. Yes, that love letter is about to blow the roof off your expectations and maybe your sanity a little before we unleash it. Smash that like button if you love a good scandal, and drop a comment telling us the weirdest thing you've ever found in a drawer. Now, dim the lights, grab your favorite snack, and settle in like you're about to binge a true crime docudrama, because you're about to pry open a yellowed envelope that smells like regret, cheap perfume, and a dash of ink-stained desperation. You feel the paper tremble under your fingers, hear the whisper of a century-old heartbeat, and wonder, was this the epic romance they wrote about in movies, or just a tragic typo of a broken heart? You sure this isn't just a cheesy note? You ask yourself, and the answer slaps you like cold rain on a summer porch. It's the kind of letter that rewrote family trees, toppled empires of gossip, and still haunts brunch conversations. So tell me, would you read it aloud or lock it away forever? Comment below, and let's decode the fallout together. In the sleepy town of Elmswood, where old oaks whispered secrets to the wind, and the air was thick with the scent of blooming magnolias, childhood friends Clara and Thomas found comfort in their shared laughter. Their days unfolded like the pages of a well-worn book, filled with stolen moments of joy and the sweet taste of lemonade on hot summer afternoons. Clara, with paint-splattered fingers, conjured the dazzling colors of sunsets onto canvas, while Thomas, with fervent passion, chronicled the extraordinary tales of their seemingly ordinary lives in his ever-present notebook. Yet, beneath the surface of their friendship huddled a love that was more than platonic, simmering quietly like a pot on the stove, waiting for the right moment to bubble over. Their bond was undeniable, yet both remained blissfully blind to the flickering flame that danced in their hearts, like two stars blissfully orbiting one another in the vast universe of adolescence. One fateful afternoon, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Clara ventured into the dusty confines of her attic, a treasure trove of memories and cobwebs thick enough to knit a sweater. As she rummaged through boxes reeking of stale air and nostalgia, her fingers brushed against something smoothed by time. An old, yellowed letter sealed with a kiss of faded red wax. The moment she unfolded it, the fragile paper cracked like the sound of breaking glass, unearthing not just words, but a story steeped in yearning and hidden desires, like a soap opera waiting to unfold. The letter told of her grandmother's passionate romance with a man whose name echoed like a haunting melody in her mind, a name she had never heard before Alexander. Clara's heart raced, as if she'd just binge-watched a season finale that left her breathless, the secrets hidden within igniting a quest not only to understand her grandmother's past, but also to uncover the buried emotions within her own life. With the letter clutched tightly in her hand, Clara felt like a detective on the verge of a breakthrough. Or perhaps a character plucked straight from a romantic comedy, right down to the hair-raising excitement that fluttered in her stomach. She shared her discovery with Thomas over their usual coffee-stained table in the cozy cafe, where they held court over pastries and daydreams. The smell of burnt coffee mingled with Clara's sense of adventure as she spoke animatedly, her eyes glistening with the thrill of unearthing a piece of her family's hidden legacy. Thomas leaned in closer, with that ever-slight crest of the eyebrow that always suggested mischief and intrigue, urging her to delve deeper. "Who knew your grandma was a secret heartbreaker?" he quipped, battling a grin amid mouthfuls of blueberry scone, an anecdote he would surely recount for years to come. Weeks rolled by like the gentle waves of the nearby lake, with Clara and Thomas embarking on their treasure hunt through family histories. Each whisper of time cracking open like old photo albums filled with faces and tales long forgotten. They scoured archives, spoke to local historians, and even planned a theatrical reenactment of her grandmother's life, complete with boom mics fashioned out of broomsticks and costumes sourced from thrift stores that smelled like the past. It was during one of these whimsical explorations that Clara glimpsed the intricacies of her grandmother's love, the heady dreams, the disappointments, and the fire that had once burned so bright. The deeper Clara dug, the more she unearthed about herself. With each revelation came a glimmer of realization. Her heart mirrored her grandmother's affair with the unknown, a reflection of aspirations unfulfilled, the aching longing for a love that could flourish off the canvas. Clara began to understand that uncovering her grandmother's secrets wasn't just about her history. It was a gateway to embracing her own feelings for Thomas, who stood steadfast beside her, companion and confidant, the hero of her unwritten love story. As the final wisps of summer melted away, Clara prepared for her revealing moment, nervous energy buzzing like a swarm of bees in her chest. As she faced the canvas one last time, she painted not just her grandmother's story, but a piece of her own heart, colors swirling in vibrant displays of passion, regret, and the tantalizing taste of potential love, all encompassed in one breathtaking masterpiece. It was a declaration, with staccato brush strokes that dared anyone not to feel, not to see the connections that tethered their lives. On the eve of the art show, as Thomas admired her work, the air crackled with unspoken truths and lingering glances, making their friendship tremble on the edge of something exhilarating. Clara finally unveiled the heart she had hidden, much like the letter that ignited her quest. And in that electrifying moment, it seemed that the very fabric of Elmswood had woven a tale of love, past, present, and perhaps a future just waiting to be painted anew. On a damp afternoon, when the clouds hung low like an ominous shroud, Clara nervously unfolded the fragile, yellowed love letter in front of Thomas. The ink, slightly faded but still bold, spoke of a romance that danced across time, revealing whispers of longing, lost in the echoes of her grandmother's past. Clara's heart raced, each word pulling her deeper into a world of possibility and secrets. Her grandmother's once hidden story was coming to life, and she had a front row seat. With a spark in his eye, Thomas leaned in closer, captivated not only by the letter, but by Clara's eagerness to dive into the murky waters of her family history. "This is just like one of those rom-coms," he quipped, flashing her a grin. "And I claim dibs on the happy ending," determined to unravel the tapestry of romance and mystery. Clara and Thomas set out on their quest, embarking on a journey that felt as nostalgic as rummaging through an attic full of forgotten treasures. However, not all treasures are welcomed with open arms. Clara's father, with a forehead that resembled a summer storm cloud, stood as the first obstacle in their path, declaring the exploration a futile endeavor, akin to watching paint dry on a Sunday afternoon. "Some ghosts are best left undisturbed," he warned, his voice a deep rumble sending tremors through Clara's resolve. A reminder that family secrets can often weigh heavier than laden chests. But Clara, fueled by determination and perhaps just a sprinkle of rebellion, was undaunted. It was her grandmother's legacy at stake, after all. As Clara and Thomas dove deeper into the archives, the scent of dusty paper and old leather filled the air, like inhaling a history book. Their fingers brushed against the spines of ancient tomes, aged like fine cheese, but far less appealing, while the whirring ceiling fan overhead sent groans through the silence. With each page they turned, new clues began to emerge, newspaper clippings from a time long gone, journal entries laced with inked passion, and the occasional comic doodle that broke the tension, reminding them to not take life too seriously. They were like detectives now, each discovery sparking excitement and bewilderment, making Clara feel as if she were channeling her very own Nancy Drew, complete with maroon lipstick, but minus the super sleuthing hat. A tinge of laughter bounced between them, overshadowing the gloomy possibility that Clara's father might actually have a point. But they didn't stop there. Barriers meant nothing to Clara and Thomas, armed with their young ambition and the stubbornness of an over-caffeinated squirrel. They visited old cafes, places where the air was rich with the waft of roasted beans and something sugary, eavesdropping on elderly patrons who recounted lives woven with loss and laughter. Discussions sparked like dynamite, seemingly ordinary conversations swirling into a whirlwind of history. Love affairs gone wrong, and friendships forged in fires long extinguished. With every shared anecdote, Clara felt emboldened. A sense of kinship with her grandmother's life unfolding before her. Yet she couldn't shake the nagging feeling of ache for answers to questions she hadn't yet discovered. There was something wonderfully chaotic about exploring the tapestry of her family, each thread tugging on heartstrings buried under years of silence. As night crept in, Clara and Thomas returned home. The warm golden glow of the lamp casting shadows of their shadows against the walls. Clara held the love letter close, her mind swirling like an old film reel, each frame hinting at possibilities yet to be explored. With both thrill and trepidation, she envisioned how their findings would alter everything, stirring old family wounds, but potentially healing them in ways her father could not fathom. Their journey was still in its infancy, but with each laugh, every breadcrumb lead, Clara unearthed not just history, but emotions blurring the lines of the past and present. Perhaps in this enigmatic puzzle lay not only her grandmother's love story, but her own emerging narrative, waiting to be written amidst laughter, chaos, and a fair dose of irony. In the dim light of Clara's attic, dust motes danced like fireflies around her as she thumbed through old love letters, their yellowed pages whispering secrets of romance long past. Each stroke of ink seemed to pulse with life, drawing Clara deeper into the story of her grandmother's forbidden love. It's like an episode of The Notebook, but without the tragic ending, right? She quipped, laughing nervously at the weight of her words. Beside her, Thomas shifted uneasily, his heart a tangled ball of yarn at the thought. The flutter of Clara's laughter sent ripples through his resolve, intertwining their fates more tightly than he had bargained for. Even the musty smell of old wood and faded perfume couldn't mask the scent of budding feelings that hummed like a radio just out of tune, pulsating silently beneath their shared adventure. As they sifted through the layers of Clara's grandmother's past, a palpable tension simmered between Clara and Thomas, an emotional balloon ready to pop at the slightest poke. Thomas couldn't shake the nervous pit in his stomach. It was one thing to unravel family mysteries, but the idea of his affection for Clara spilling out like spaghetti from an overstuffed pot. Terrifying. He recalled the scene from Friends where Ross couldn't admit his feelings to Rachel, and for a moment he could practically hear the laugh track playing ominously in the background. But here they were, inching closer together in spirit, even as doubt wrapped its icy fingers around Thomas's heart. What if their friendship was the very thing worth preserving? The old family estate loomed ahead, moss creeping up its brick facade, wrapping each corner in the embrace of time's ineffable power. Its cracked windows seemed to peer out like tired eyes, holding witness to countless stories, and those glimpses of the past pulsated in the air, thick as syrup on a summer day. Clara's heart raced as they stepped over the threshold, the scent of aged wood mingling with a faint hint of lavender that spoke of a forgotten garden. Every creak of the floorboards beneath their feet sounded like a ghostly whisper, tantalizing them to listen closely. This place is like a time capsule, minus the insidious smell of dirty socks that usually accompany those things, Clara joked, her voice breaking the spell as Thomas chuckled nervously, doing his best to dispel the shadows creeping at the edges of his mind. Within the estate, a treasure trove of long-hidden objects revealed themselves: old photographs, tarnished silverware, and dusty journals filled with tales of passion, loss, and the occasional disastrous dinner party that smacked of great expectations. As Clara flipped through a journal filled with looping cursive, emotions bubbled and surfaced like soda shaken too long. A line about love's enduring power struck her to the core, igniting a warmth in her chest. Yet the swirling doubts over her connection with Thomas stung like a forgotten thumbtack underfoot. The atmosphere grew thick as a romantic comedy's climax, where the awkward tension ebbed and flowed, and it became evident that each reveal brought them closer to uncharted territory, their unspoken feelings floating like balloons ready to burst. Yet what Clara saw as inspiration, Thomas saw as a tightrope walk over a canyon of feelings. With every artifact they uncovered, the evidence of love from the past not only highlighted the beauty of Clara's grandmother's story, but also illuminated the stark reality of his own feelings, making his pulse quicken with each discovery. Now I understand why they say love is like an old film reel, gritty, full of surprises, and prone to breaking when you least expect it, Thomas quipped, trying to lighten the mood as a smirk flickered across Clara's face. What he didn't realize was the irony. While they were piecing together someone else's memories, they were weaving a tapestry of their own, intricately colored by the slight awkwardness and powerful pull that neither could deny. And the deeper they delved, the more the tide of emotion rose, threatening to engulf them both. Just as the ocean swells before a storm, foreboding yet irresistibly captivating, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the sprawling estate. Clara's heart raced, not from the beauty of the moment, But because of the storm brewing in her life, her father, a tempest of fury and betrayal, stormed into the garden like a character straight out of a Shakespearean drama, all bluster and bravado. "You will cease this foolishness," he bellowed, his voice echoing off the ancient stone walls as if the very estate were rebuking him. Clara could smell the crisp autumn leaves mingling with the earthy scent of impending rain, a fitting backdrop to her swirling emotions. With every word he spat, she felt her resolve harden like steel, a strange, rebellious thrill tingling in her veins that made her want to retort in the most theatrical way possible. Maybe even throw a decorative punch bowl just for fun. Out of the shadows, Thomas appeared, his presence a calming balm against her father's chaos, a dashing hero, if you will, coming to save the day, or perhaps just provide moral support. He stepped closer, eyes roaming with a mixture of concern and admiration, his warmth wrapping around her like a snug wool blanket. It was at that precise moment, with the air thick enough to cut with a knife, that Clara finally felt the weight of the unspoken words pressing against her chest, like a heavy treasure chest in a long-lost pirate ship, stories of bygone passions, echoing from her grandmother's long-cherished letter, seemed to intertwine with the current turmoil, threading a kind of cosmic fate that demanded to be acknowledged. Clara's thoughts danced chaotically, as if they'd had too many cups of coffee, about the old love story tied to her lineage, compelling her to reconsider every choice she'd ever made about love, including her own feelings for Thomas. Why must we always tread where our ancestors feared to tread? She finally burst out, shattering the stifling atmosphere like an exquisite crystal vase tumbling from the mantelpiece. Emotions flared, sparking truths like dry wood feeding a flame. Thomas, with a hesitant yet earnest demeanor, echoed Clara's frustrations, sharing the silent burdens he'd carried as well, leaving a gaping chasm of vulnerability between them, in which love might just find an opportunity to flourish. Just then, a crow cawed nearby, its voice a dark harbinger, or perhaps just a steadfast onlooker to their messy, unfolding saga. Clara shot a glance toward the sky, half expecting a swarm of dramatic pigeons to swoop down and peck at her father's judgmental eyebrows, ready to take sides in this tempestuous family affair. But amidst the chaos, Clara felt something shift within her. The tension became a tapestry of possibility, woven from the fears and hopes they'd kept tightly laced. She reached for Thomas's hand, feeling its warmth, its strength, and the smell of fresh grass as the evening breeze tousled their hair. Together, they unearthed a profound secret hidden within her grandmother's love letter, a revelation that revealed not just familial silence about relationships, but the ghostly echoes of regrets that had permeated their lives. It was a startling realization that her family's long-held silence wasn't just about not talking. It was a heavy vault of unturned keys and unclaimed destinies, almost comical in its irony, like a romantic comedy without the laughs, until now. Their lives waiting for the much-needed plot twist. In that moment, everything came crashing together, the revelation, the tumultuous love story of old, and the passion simmering between Clara and Thomas. The universe had conspired, serving them a slice of fate that could, if they dared, lead them toward happiness rather than heartache. As Clara took a deep breath, the scent of impending rain mixed with ripe apples hanging from the nearby orchard flooded her senses, urging her on. She leaned closer to Thomas, her heart pounding like a drum roll at a movie premiere, ready to declare the love she had kept under wraps like a surprise party gone rogue. And just as her lips parted to speak, a thunderous clap resonated overhead, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath and wanting to join in this long overdue celebration of love, secrets, and new beginnings. As sunlight streamed warmly through the dusty windows, Clara felt an exhilarating flutter in her chest, like 1,000 butterflies having a rave inside her. The air, rich with the scent of aged paper and ink, enveloped her as she stood in her father's study, clutching the historic love letter that had been a secret for far too long. This yellowed parchment had seen more drama than a daytime soap. Yet it was also a gateway, bridging a chasm of silence that had lingered ominously over their family. With each word she read, she could feel the chains of the past shattering like glass. So satisfying you could almost hear the triumphant cheers of an invisible audience. What had once been a tale of misfortune was slowly becoming a poignant reminder that love, in all its messy glory, had the capacity to heal even the deepest wounds. Thomas stood beside her, his hands stuffed awkwardly in his pockets, a sheepish grin tugging at the corners of his mouth like a kid caught stealing cookies. He had spent countless hours unearthing the truth alongside Clara. The scent of old books and burnt coffee becoming intimately familiar as they searched for clues amidst the tattered relics of yesteryear. Now, as they stood on the precipice of discovery, he couldn't help but admire Clara's fire, a blend of resilience and determination, igniting his own heart in the process. The shadows of their respective pasts were being chased away, like a bad horror movie villain disappearing into the sunshine. And with that, a spark of romance started to blossom between them. It was as if they were characters in a movie where the quirky best friends suddenly realize they were meant to be more than just mates. Cue the romantic score. Clara's father lumbered into the room, his gruff demeanor softening like an ice cream cone on a hot summer day. He cleared his throat awkwardly, the sound echoing against the tall stacks of books lining the walls, and Clara braced herself for the worst, ready for another lecture on duty and tradition. Instead, in a moment that felt straight out of a script from an Oscar-winning film, he confessed that he had made mistakes that had almost cost him his daughter's joy. The air felt charged, like after a summer storm, as father and daughter stood, unyielding yet vulnerable, in that sacred space. Clara, with tears brimming in her eyes, realized that love's power was not just in romantic escapades, but also in mending frayed familial bonds, as her father's acceptance felt like a heartwarming hug from an old friend, now free from the burdens of past secrets. Clara and Thomas stepped into the vibrant tapestry of a new life, where every heartbeat resonated with possibility. The sky above them blazed in hues of orange and pink, setting the perfect backdrop for their blossoming romance, the kind that makes you sigh in satisfaction, like the last bite of a chocolate cake after a long day. As they wandered through the bustling market, laughing at each other's terrible jokes, everything felt brighter. Even the smell of roasted chestnuts wafting through the air seemed sweeter. With each shared glance and stolen moment, they wove dreams into reality, a canvas splattered with love, creativity, and a sprinkle of mischief. It was almost as if they were writing their own love letter, page by page, each moment a testament to their newfound freedom. And that love letter, once a dusty token of heartache and regret, transformed into an emblem of hope and change, a magical prop in their own romantic saga. Clara couldn't help but chuckle when she thought of it. Now so much more than a mere piece of parchment, it was the literary equivalent of a blockbuster movie, with surprise twists and heartfelt endings. They ventured forward, hand in hand, bearing the legacy of that letter with them like a treasured map, guiding them on their journey. Together, they would walk a path filled with laughter and heartache, creativity and understanding, ready to unveil the adventures awaiting them just beyond the horizon. Indeed, they had turned a pivotal page, not just in the book of their lives, but in a grand tale about love's undeniable strength, proving that the past might shape us, but love, oh sweet love, would always lead us home, in the regal heart of Eldoria, where the castle's towering spires pierced the sky like a chorus of arrows aimed at freedom. Princess Alara perched on her balcony, staring out into the wild expanse beyond the walls. The air was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine, and the faint smoke from the village forge, where the rhythmic clanging of metal on metal echoed like a heartbeat. Every thud sent tremors through her heart, reminding her of the pulse of life just beyond her gilded cage. She yearned for the taste of adventure, not just the dried figs of castle banquets, or the echoing laughter of court jesters mimicking the nobles. To her, life was a melody, and every note faded just as she reached for it, like the wispy clouds that drifted lazily above her, unreachable, yet so temptingly beautiful. Meanwhile, down in the bustling village, Aidan, the humble blacksmith, was molding metal with passionate intensity, like a chef whipping up a feast for an unseen audience. His muscled arms moved with precision, glistening with sweat that caught the sunlight and shimmered like the treasures of the kingdom. The unmistakable aroma of heated iron mingled with the savory scent of baked bread, making even the hungriest of peasants stop and stare, tongues salivating. As he forged swords, he dreamt of creating something that would change Eldoria, something that would dazzle the royal court, and perhaps even capture the eye of a certain princess. Little did he know, fate had plans far grander than a simple sword. Love would forge a path neither could resist. Alara's curiosity was a fire crackling within her, and despite the warnings echoing in her mind like the toll of a sorrowful bell, she slipped into the village one cool afternoon, her heart racing like a wild stallion. She wandered through narrow alleyways bursting with vibrant life, the sounds of merchants hawking their wares mixing with the laughter of children chasing chickens. There, in the midst of the chaos, she found Aidan, his strong hands expertly crafting a glowing blade that gleamed like a secret waiting to be revealed. Time seemed to freeze as their eyes met, igniting a spark of recognition that spoke of unshared dreams and unbridled yearning. In that moment, the world faded away. The only soundtrack was the rhythm of their hearts, drumming a duet, just for the two of them. Oh, but love in Eldoria was not a simple affair. No, it came wrapped in layers of societal expectations, like a ghastly onion that made you weep every time you unpeeled it. As they exchanged shy glances and stolen smiles, the reality of their lives loomed over them like a shadowy specter. The whispers of court gossip were vicious, a storm brewing that could threaten the very fabric of the kingdom. Would a princess risk everything for a mere blacksmith, a man whose hands were forever stained with soot and sweat? The irony hung thick in the air, a rich scent of rebellion mixed with trepidation, as bonds formed, challenging the very rules they had been taught to uphold. Perhaps it was destiny, or just wild folly, but the invisible thread pulling them together was far more potent than the iron Aidan shaped in his forge. Each clandestine meeting unfolded like a scene from a forbidden tale, filled with laughter, sharp glances, and the promise of the unknown. Alara's spirit soared with each secret shared, while Aidan's strong heart thudded in time with hers. not just as a princess and a commoner, but as two souls woven from the same tapestry, yearning for connection in a kingdom teetering on the brink of change. As they stood there, surrounded by the rich tapestry of life, an unspoken pact formed that their love, as forbidden as it was, might just hold the power to reshape their world and breathe life into dreams once thought impossible. Maybe, just maybe, in a kingdom drowning in turmoil, their love story was the spark that could ignite a revolution. In the heart of the sprawling kingdom of Eldoria, where the sun dipped below the horizon like molten gold, Elara found solace in the solitude of the ancient oak grove. The leaves whispered secrets, their shadows dancing playfully in the fading light as she waited for Aiden, that captivating thief of her heart. Her pulse quickened, not just from the thrill of their illicit rendezvous, but from the electric charge hanging in the air, a concoction of hope and trepidation. The scent of damp earth mingled with the sweet fragrance of wildflowers, enveloping her in a fragrant embrace, as if nature herself conspired to shield their love from prying eyes. Here, with the world at bay, Elara felt freer than she ever had within the gilded cage of the castle walls. Yet the weight of her future looming behind her like a storm cloud refused to dissipate entirely. As Aiden emerged from the shadows, his presence was like a sudden gust of wind, stirring the very leaves that protected their secret haven. With tousled hair that caught the last remnants of sunlight and a grin that could soften the angriest of nights, he approached Elara with a blend of mischief and earnestness. They exchanged dreams like children share candies. His wild ambitions to explore the world beyond the castle's oppressive confines, and her hesitation to embrace a future dictated by duty, shackled by destiny. Elara's laughter, a sound more melodic than the chirping crickets surrounding them, flowed freely, but lurking beneath was the faint echo of heartache, a reminder that their worlds were as divided as the moon and the stars. In those moments, surrounded by nature's applause, they painted a life together that felt achingly real, yet hopelessly out of reach. Back at the castle, however, a darkness stalked their delicate romance. Lord Malric, the epitome of a villain dressed in fine silks, had noticed their secret exchanges, his eyes like daggers, calculating their next move. Jealousy twisted in his gut, a rotting fruit refusing to fall from the tree, as he plotted to extirpate the love that bloomed in the shadows. The court buzzed with whispered suspicions swirling in the air like thick fog, each hushed tone a pinprick of paranoia threatening to undermine Elara's burgeoning happiness. As stern-faced guards and grumbling servants paced the corridors, the very walls of the castle seemed to close in on her, each stone imbued with a sense of foreboding. echoing her internal conflict between her heart's fervor and her royal obligations. With each stolen moment that Alara spent with Aidan, the vibrant colors of her longing clashed violently with the muted grays of her responsibilities. She could already hear the trumpets of her future, the call of duty sounding louder than ever, heralding her ascent as queen, a role she never truly desired, yet sharing tender touches and skin against skin warmth with Aidan brought the heat of rebellion to life, each embrace igniting an undeniable flame within her. She could almost taste the bittersweet flavor of love, sugar and salt intermingling, like popcorn and pickles at a summer fair. An odd combination, but oddly satisfying. But the thought of keeping him a secret felt like carrying a too heavy burden, where every heartbeat screamed of the price they would pay if their love were discovered. As twilight surrendered to night, Alara's heart grew heavier with each passing hour spent in Aidan's presence. She knew their time was limited, a fleeting candle flickering against a storm of darkened, scheming intents. Malric's shadow loomed larger with every secret rendezvous, a menacing reminder that love in a world ruled by power often rewrites destinies, script with blood and betrayal. Yet in those precious moments, with the world beyond the grove fading into the background, Alara chose to embrace the warmth of Aidan's hand in hers, cherishing the gentle thrill of defiance as a spark of hope amid the looming darkness. Thus, with laughter dancing on her lips and uncertainty curling in her gut, she surrendered to the magic of their stolen moments, making a silent vow to fight for herself, for Aidan, and for a love that might just change the tides of their kingdom. In the heart of Eldoria, where the sun dipped behind ancient stone towers, whispers fluttered like errant sparrows, carrying the tale of Alara and Aidan's entwined fates. Each rustle of the leaves in the royal garden seemed to mourn their secret as Alara's parents. Faces set like carved marble called for a meeting that felt heavier than a storm cloud. A noble suitor, they insisted, their voices echoing with the weight of tradition, is essential for securing an alliance worthy of our name. Alara, caught between duty and desire, rolled her eyes at the thought, imagining herself dancing at a ball with some overzealous lord whose idea of romance was a bouquet of parsnips and a wink. Would they ever understand that her heart fluttered not for title or power, but for the boy whose laughter sounded like wind chimes in spring? As lilacs bloomed around her, their sweet fragrance masked the bitterness of impending obligation, leaving her with a heart divided and a candy-coated rebellion brewing inside. Meanwhile, lurking in the shadows of the court was Malric, a man whose very name tasted like spoiled milk on the tongue. Swallowed by jealousy and a sense of entitlement, he plotted against Aidan with all the subtlety of a brick through a stained glass window. He'd known Alara's heart was meant to be captured by a worthy suitor, and in his eyes, Aidan was nothing more than a pesky fly buzzing around his dreams of grandeur. The air crackled with tension as he cornered Aidan in the marketplace, where the scent of freshly baked bread mingled awkwardly with the threatening stink of intimidation. "You think you're worthy of her affections," Malric sneered, his brow furrowed like a stormy landscape, while Aidan stood tall, heart racing like a kingdom charged for battle. In that moment, a flicker of defiance ignited in Aidan, a promise that no petty nobleman would dictate his fate or cower his resolve. Their clandestine rendezvous, often snatched away like unguarded cookies from a jar, grew ever more perilous as Aidan and Alara ventured deeper into the realm of forbidden romance. Beneath the moon's watchful eye, they shared stolen moments filled with laughter, exchanged promises, and even crafted dreams of a future painted in vibrant shades of freedom. It was a daring world beyond the rigid confines of duty, where vibrant wildflowers waved like little flags of rebellion against the conformist armies assembled behind their parents. But every stolen kiss tasted bittersweet as the reality of obligation loomed over them, the acidic tang of anxiety lurking in their minds. What if the kingdom demands my hand? Alara mused one night, her voice barely above a whisper, the fragrant air thick with unspoken fears, and the distant sound of laughter ringing like joyful funeral bells. Aidan's response was simple yet electric, igniting thoughts trapped in their chests. "Then we fight the kingdom." Oh, the irony in a realm where love felt like a rebellion. As days slipped away like grains of sand through her fingers, Alara's heart twisted with the weight of an impossible choice. Abide by the shackles of tradition, or break free into uncharted territories for the sake of love. She envisioned exchanging her sweetheart for a pearl-studded marriage proposal, trapped in a gilded cage, while her dreams danced just beyond her grasp. With courtly eyes fixed firmly on her, she found the sights of her future dreams fading. Yet, the way Aidan would brush her hands left flames of hope fluttering deep within her chest. Yet each time Malric's taunts echoed in her mind, she felt more alive, a delicious thrill coursing through her veins as she contemplated the bold path before her. Her laughter mingled with the vibrant songs of spring birds overhead, and for a fleeting moment, she felt as if she could flap her arms and take flight, leaving all doubts and expectations behind. The world spun on, unsteady yet inviting, whispering promises of defiance, wrapped in the crisp scent of adventure waiting across the horizon. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, Alara realized that love was not just a choice. It was a battleground. The vibrant thrill of rebellion surged through her, washing away remnants of fear as she prepared to confront her family. Summoning every ounce of courage she had, she imagined the look on her parents' faces when she declared her intent, every gasp and widened eye echoing with the same disbelief as witnessing a chicken wearing tiny sunglasses. Would she have the strength to stand firm in her declaration of love for Aiden, to defy the chains that had bound her? With a heart hammering against her ribcage, she whispered to herself, "This is my kingdom, and I am my own ruler." With those words, she took her first resolute step toward Aiden, ready to lead the charge against an army of expectations. The night hummed with electricity as Alara prepared to unleash a rebellion that would either make or break the world she had always known. In the heart of the grand ballroom, chandeliers shimmered like stars caught in a web of crystal, casting a golden glow upon a sea of silks and velvets. Alara stood atop the polished marble dais, her heart an erratic drumbeat against the backdrop of noble chatter and laughter. The sense of sweat-slicked bodies mingled with the sweetness of honeyed pastries, assailing her senses. This was the night meant to seal her fate, the night of her betrothal. Yet the only person her eyes sought amidst the finery and charm was Aiden, with every expectation hanging thick in the air. She felt as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap into the unknown. As her parents flashed their toothy smiles, more gleeful than a cat with a canary, Alara summoned her courage like a true knight gearing up for battle. The nobles gazed on with expectant eyes, their delicate fingers poised to cradle goblets of spiced wine. "I cannot marry him," she cried, raising her voice to slice through the chorus of gasps. A thunderous silence descended like a blanket as her declaration echoed off the gilded walls. With an indignant twist of her gown, she boldly declared her love for Aiden, whose face blanched at the sudden spectacle much like a graphic novel character, realizing they had just stepped into the wrong dimension. The crowd's reaction was a mosh pit of shock and delight, a cacophony of whispers that fluttered around the room like startled pigeons. Somewhere, a bemused courtier coughed up a laugh. "Now that's an unexpected plot twist." But this was no light-hearted affair. In the far corner, dark clouds gathered around Malric, the jealous suitor, whose expression soured faster than milk left in the sun. Fueled by rage and tradition, he surged forward, his intentions cloaked in menace, determined to snuff out the blossoming flame of their love. The tension crackled in the air, and every heart at that ball beat to the rhythm of impending chaos. With a suddenness that made even the chandeliers tremble, Malric lunged, his hands outstretched like claws seeking to ensnare and separate. The noblemen gasped, wine went spilling, and Alara could hear the collective intake of breath that followed, as if time itself had paused to witness the monumental confrontation. In that heartbeat, Alara felt the rush of adrenaline and the taste of iron in her mouth, not from fear, but from the undeniable passion that stirred within her. Aidan stepped before her, legs poised like a valiant knight shielding his lady love, his resolve hardening into a wall against Malric's onslaught. The ballroom roared back to life, an energetic frenzy of loyalty and betrayal, like one of those old-timey duels where a troubadour might pop up to sing about the imminent tragedy. Love had drawn its lines in the sand, daring any force to cross it, while the clanking of armor and the rustle of fancy gowns complemented the chaos that tinged the air. Alara felt the warmth of Aidan's presence beside her, an anchoring force amidst the storm, as she braced herself for whatever came next. With her heart on her sleeve and defiance in her stance, she whispered a silent prayer that love might cleave through tyranny like a well-aimed sword. Cheers erupted from some corners, while others hissed like agitated cats at the audacity of her choice. Whatever the outcome, Alara knew they had crossed an unwritten threshold, and the kingdom would never be the same again. With the sun rising over the kingdom of Eldoria, its golden beams pierced through the remnants of the dark clouds that had loomed ominously over the castle. The echoes of Malric's rage still reverberated in the stone corridors, but they were soon drowned out by the jubilant cheers of the townsfolk gathered below. Aidan stood tall, his heart racing as he and Alara stepped onto the balcony, their hands clasped together, feeling the pulse of hope from the crowd. It's like the final scene of a fairy tale, minus the dragon, Aidan quipped, his infectious smile lighting up the morning, a stark contrast to the smoky remnants of tyranny left behind by Malric's machinations. Alara giggled, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her eyes sparkling with determination that promised to defy the very winds of fate that had once sought to tear them apart. The confrontation had been fierce, a tempest of emotions, noble blood, and ruthless ambitions clashing like swords battling for dominion. And yet, amid the chaos, the truth had slithered out like a snake uncoiling from the shadowy corners of deceit, revealing Malric for the puppet master he truly was. The sly lord's manipulations, once hidden behind a smiling facade, now lay exposed for all to see, like a sinister magician pulling back the curtain to reveal the tricks of his trade. A shiver ran through the crowd, but it was not one of fear. It was the thrill of revelation. The collective gasp at Justice's arrival, dressed in the cloaks of Alara and Aidan. Plot twist, Alara remarked, her voice rising above the murmurs as she beamed. capturing the attention of the crowd with her boundless energy and spirit. As Malric's power crumbled, like an ancient statue worn away by the relentless tide, Alara and Aidan found themselves not just united in victory, but in a profound connection that had been forged in the fires of strife. They stood as aging warriors might, after a long campaign, breathless yet exhilarated, knuckles still white from the grip of battle. Aidan's sharp wit cut through the weight of the moment, his voice riffing over the excitement. So this is what they mean by being the king and queen of the castle. Fancy a few crowns, love. His cheeky charm was met with a playful roll of Alara's eyes, their bond stronger than anything forged by royal decree or silver-trimmed coffers. Glancing at the jubilant crowd, they saw in their eyes not just gratitude, but an unspoken promise of unity. A community reborn from the ashes of conflict. That day, the air crackled with the tang of victory, mingling with the sweet scent of baked bread wafting from the nearby market. As if the town itself was celebrating anew, children ran through the cobbled streets, their laughter dancing like fireflies, while the faint strains of a bard's lute in the square painted a joyous melody over the shifting tides of the kingdom's fate. Alara and Aidan, arms raised in triumph, became living symbols of hope, a pair of intertwined vines clinging together against the howling storm of tyranny. They were no mere lovers, but torchbearers leading the way through the sprawling darkness of doubt, their love a beacon that promised brighter days ahead. It felt like a scene ripped from the pages of a romance novel, except this was real life, with its own messy, delightful chaos, and a hefty dose of irony strewn throughout. As the sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky with strokes of crimson and gold, Alara whispered to Aidan, "We've not just won a battle, we've ignited a revolution, a new dawn." Each word dripped with hope, echoing in the bewitching twilight like a rallying cry that summoned even the most skeptical hearts to the call of change. In the labor of rebuilding that lay ahead, they basked in the knowledge that love could usher in a renaissance, embracing the young and the old, the cautious and the bold, everyone in a tapestry of unity. With every cheer that erupted from the townsfolk, they saw a future shimmering on the horizon, full of laughter, justice, and possibility. And as the stars began to twinkle like diamonds in the expansive sky, they knew their story was just beginning. The ink still wet, the chapters yet to be written in the annals of Eldoria. In the year 1916, the air around the trenches was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the haunting echoes of artillery shells. Young Thomas, a soldier barely out of his teens, found himself knee-deep in mud that squelched like a disgruntled old man every time he moved. The relentless drizzle turned the battlefield into a muddy hell, And each morning he awoke not to the sweet aroma of fresh bread, but to the rancid stench of sweat and fear. Despite the horrors unfolding around him, men shouting in pain, and the ground trembling with explosions, Thomas clung to a fragile thread of hope. That hope was encapsulated in a single name, Aliner, the one bright star in his dark and murky sky. As soldiers around him struggled to maintain their sanity, he held tight to his secret, a handwritten letter tucked safely in his breast pocket, like a talisman against despair. When the gunfire was momentarily silenced, solitude settled around Thomas like a well-worn coat, warm yet heavy with the weight of his thoughts. He would often steal away to a quiet corner of the trench, where the mud felt more forgiving, with the sounds of distant explosions muffled in the background. He would pull out his battered notebook, ink smudged in places like a well-used comic book left out in the rain. Each letter to Aliner was a love letter and a lifeline, a chance to express fears he couldn't voice out loud, sharing dreams of their future that felt as distant as the stars. He pictured their home, filled with laughter, where the worst concerns were whether the dog had chased away the mailman, or if the tea was strong enough. His words became a defiance against the chaos, a romantic's rebellion against an unforgiving world. Yet, amidst the poetic musings and declarations of love, reality had a way of crashing down like a poorly timed comedic punchline. Thomas found that every time he penned an earnest thought, the trench walls seemed to echo back a cruel reminder of mortality. Bombs were not partial to love letters. They revered no romantic ideal. One moment, he might be capturing the golden glow of Aliner's laugh, while the next, he was reminded of the harshness of trench life, the biting cold, the ceaseless rain, and that one guy who really should have stopped eating beans at dinner. The din of war danced around him, a perpetual cacophony mixing the sounds of human misery and iron machinery. But it was in the echoes of love that Thomas found his small rebellion, a crude but magnificent way to keep warm in a towering inferno of despair. As the shelling began again, rattling his bones like a maraca in a salsa class, Thomas vowed to never let fear overshadow his affection for Aliner. He let his imagination paint pictures of walking hand in hand through sun-drenched fields, where the only thing threatening their tranquility was the occasional bee buzzing lazily overhead. With each letter, he highlighted the beauty of life they would share, and the mundane worries that would soon fade into laughter, like whether to hang the laundry outside, even if there was a chance of rain. Letter by letter, he crafted an enchanting illusion, one where both the sublime and the ridiculous danced together, like a couple seeking solace at the end of a long night of waltzing with the horrors of war. And in those moments, amidst the relentless chaos of World War I, Thomas transformed the trenches into a canvas of dreams, a space to create, even if only for a fleeting moment. In the harsh reality of life in the trenches, letters became his whispers of courage, his sweet serenades. Thomas yearned for the simple things: a leaner's giggle, a shared meal, the feel of grass beneath his feet, not just the survival of days, but the flourishing of life itself. As the war raged on, knotted up like a sweater you can't quite unravel, every letter sent back home was a small act of defiance, an insistence on love amidst the bleakness of destruction. And as he folded the latest note, sealing it with a dab of mud, as irony would have it, his only ink, he carried a small yet mighty belief that echoed louder than any cannon fire. Love can exist even in the trenches, blooming defiantly between the cracks of despair. Armed with this conviction, Thomas took a deep breath, ready to face the battle yet again, knowing that Aliner's name was his shield against the horrors of war. In the muddy trenches of World War I, the air was thick with the stench of wet earth and gunpowder, each breath a reminder of their dire reality. Soldiers huddled together, sharing not just their rations, but their fears and hopes. For Thomas, however, the letters that fluttered into their camp like butterflies amidst the chaos were more than mere words. They were lifelines. Each note from his beloved back home was a fragrant escape, a whiff of lavender in an environment saturated with decay. He could almost hear her voice, sweet and melodic, breaking through the thunderous cacophony of artillery fire, whispering promises of a future wrapped in happiness and love. If only they could survive this hellish tempest together. But whispers of war hissed ominously around them like the relentless wind, bringing news of an impending major offensive that sent shivers down Thomas's spine. They would soon be thrust into a maelstrom of chaos, where comrades became mere statistics, and the sounds of gunfire might drown out even the tender words from home. Ironically, while letters offered a taste of romance, reality was as unromantic as a mud-soaked boot. The clatter of steel and cries of men echoed, overshadowing dreams of kisses and candlelit dinners. Each tick of the clock intensified the urgency, and he couldn't help but feel like the lead in some tragic play, where each scene brought him closer to an inevitable, heart-wrenching finale. As days passed, the warmth of those letters began to feel like a flickering candle in a drafty room, the luminous glow extinguished with every report of fallen comrades, friends who had shared laughter and stories around dwindling fires, now became names etched on a desolate wall of memory. Their absence felt like a phantom limb, a missing part of his very soul. Thomas's resolve, once as steady as a soldier's march, began to waver like a flag in a storm, tattered and torn. Each passing day added weight to his heart, heavy with dread, and he feared the next letter may not hold the sweet words he craved, but rather the painful whip of reality. Would it be his name next on the growing list of tragedies? The thought stung like a bee, but with no honey in sight. He could almost taste the irony in the air, bitter and acrid like chewed tobacco, as he grasped the reality that love and war often occupied different universes. While the battlefield was littered with despair, the letters were filled with dreams, creating a delicious distance between their worlds. Who would go out for a romance novel when you could flip through the pages of his own life, rife with heroics and heartbreak? As he penned his own letters in return, he crafted tales of gallantry, tales in which romance threaded through the conflict like a ribbon through a battlefield. He poured his heart out, embellishing the truth to protect her from the grim sights and sounds surrounding him, transforming his own reality into a passionate, albeit twisted, story. But as his pen hovered over the paper, poised to form the next line, reality hit him like a low-flying plane buzzing overhead. The war outside was relentless and unyielding. The irony of writing romantic escapades while bombs dropped like rain was not lost on him. It felt akin to writing a love song in the middle of a rock concert gone rogue. He could hear the soft cries of the men around him, their fears whispering louder than their laughter used to. What if his letters never reached her? What if she never knew the depths of his affection or the battles he fought, not just against the enemy, but against despair itself? The echoes of war loomed ever closer, and with each final dot of ink on the page, Thomas felt the bittersweet sting of love and loss intertwine, a dance as old as time itself. The air crackled with tension, the steady roar of cannon fire rolling like thunder across the battlefield. Thomas crouched in the mud, clutching a crumpled letter from Alina like a lifeline. Her words danced in his mind, painting a picture of home. A sun-drenched meadow swirling with wildflowers and laughter that felt a world away from the stench of gunpowder and decay. Her fears rang through his heart, echoing louder than the cries of soldiers around him. "Come back to me," she had written, and amid the chaos, he felt an odd warmth surge through him, as though he were wrapped in a blanket of memories and hope. If only he could bottle that feeling and carry it into battle with him, the war might just seem a little less hellish, maybe even a tad heroic, like something out of a Hollywood blockbuster, sans the dreadful explosions of reality that accompanied this twisted production. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the battlefield morphed into a surreal painting of chaos. Smoke curled like ghosts, and shadows danced ominously under the flickering light of dying flames. The contorted faces of men caught in the frenzy told their own ghastly stories, and Thomas could barely differentiate between friend and foe in the nightmarish melee. Suddenly, the stillness shattered like glass. Enemy fire erupted, and the ground rumbled beneath their feet as the long-feared battle unleashed its fury. Fear prickled at the back of his neck, but he dug his heels into the mud, listening to Aliner's words like a talisman against despair. "Keep your spirit strong, Thomas," she had implored, and with each gunshot, he felt her presence guiding him through the storm. But soon, the vivid tapestry of battle painted over his resolve with shades of despair. Chaos erupted around him. Men screamed. Bodies fell like marionettes discarded of their strings, and the acrid smell of blood and smoke hung thick in the air, wrapping him in a suffocating embrace. Thomas ducked behind a dirt embankment, chest heaving, his heart pounding a relentless beat that felt like a war drum in its own right. A glance to his left revealed a comrade crying out for help, his leg twisted at a grotesque angle, much like a bad joke gone awry. Thomas's stomach churned, the visceral reality of his situation squeezing the breath from his lungs. What was it they said about war? It reeked of irony, laughter stripped from its core, replaced instead with the chilling understanding that survival often meant witnessing the unthinkable. In that harrowing moment, with explosions rumbling like the finale of an over-the-top action film, Thomas realized he was caught in a trap. A soldier in a secret love story turned full-blown disaster movie. The battle raged on, a relentless beast clawing at all he held dear. He remembered Aliner's face, framed by the sunlight of a perfect afternoon, laughter bubbling from her lips like music, an antidote to the hell around him. He felt the grip of despair tightening around his heart, but somewhere deep inside, a flicker of defiance ignited. "Not today," he whispered fervently, as if challenging fate itself, feeling the fire of 1,000 suns behind the flicker of that one stubborn flame of hope. But fate, as ever, had a twisted sense of humor. Just as Thomas reasserted his will to survive, a deafening explosion rocked the earth, throwing him backward like a rag doll in a windstorm. Time slowed, and for a heartbeat, he floated through a world painted in sepia tones, free from the chaos clawing at his ankles. The noise faded into an echo, a distant memory, as he stared into the yawning abyss of his own future, uncertain and terrifically cruel. In that moment, with the battlefield swirling around him like a grotesque carnival, Thomas knew the stakes had escalated. He wasn't just fighting for survival. He was battling for the promise of tomorrow, for a hopeful reunion with Alinor, if he could somehow emerge from this madness intact. The irony wasn't lost on him. In a world littered with destruction, his greatest challenge now was to keep alive the flicker of love that had been ignited with a simple letter. Amidst the chaos of battle, Thomas stumbled upon an abandoned farmhouse, its once whitewashed walls now stained with the grime of war. The air was thick with the acrid stench of gunpowder and sweat, swirling around him like a shroud. As he pushed open a creaking door, it groaned in protest, revealing a sanctuary of dust and shadows. Here, in the dim light, he could almost hear Alinor's laughter echoing off the faded walls, her voice a sweet melody against the cacophony of cannons roaring in the distance. With trembling hands, he took out a worn piece of paper and began to write, pouring his heart into every word for the woman who held his soul captive, promising her he would return from this madness, come hell or high water or a cannonball, for that matter. But the serenity was short-lived, as the distant rumble of infantry echoed closer, and the farmhouse shook under the weight of impending doom. Thomas felt his heart thump like a rebellious drummer, a queasy reminder that love and life were precariously intertwined, especially in times like these. He wrote fervently, his ink a black spattering of hope against the parchment, even as thoughts of leaving the farmhouse, his temporary fortress, plagued him. Every pen stroke was seasoned with the smoky aftertaste of despair, making him acutely aware of the ticking clock. If he didn't act, it wouldn't just be his dreams of Alinor that were buried under rubble, but the lives of those too weak to escape. That's when courage showed up wearing a superhero cape and gave him a swift kick in the backside. In an instant, Thomas launched into action, leaving the safety of the farmhouse behind. The world outside had become a horror movie, with fireballs lighting the sky and the wails of the wounded creating a dissonant soundtrack that would haunt him forever. His breath came in short gasps as he sprinted toward the disheveled forms, some hidden beneath tattered cloth, and others pleading for relief that felt eternally just out of reach. Adrenaline coursed through him like a caffeinated jackrabbit. The thought of Alinor propelled him onwards. Her smile was his North Star, burning brightly even amid the gunfire. How bizarre, he thought dryly, that love was giving him the kind of bravery usually reserved for action heroes on the silver screen, minus the popcorn and the happy ending. As he pulled the injured into the makeshift shelter, the tension in the air thickened. It felt as if the very fabric of survival was teetering on the edge of a knife. The sounds of the battlefield grew like a beast stalking its prey, and each thud matching the rhythm of his anxious heart. Pungent scents of blood mingled with the dust, creating a cocktail as intoxicating as it was stomach-churning. He could hear his own breath hitching in his throat, almost embarrassed by the desperation that echoed through his very bones, like a bad sitcom character caught in a melodrama he never auditioned for. Yet whenever he closed his eyes, her image would surface, halting his fears. Each vision of Alinor, a warm embrace wrapped around his weary spirit. The climax hung heavily as Thomas found himself torn between survival and duty. A modern-day Romeo with the battlefield as his Verona. The enemy advanced like a tide he could not hold back, its relentless force threatening to drown him in chaos. Just a little longer, he urged himself, thinking of Alinor waiting back in her sunlit garden, her laughter like the chiming of distant church bells. Irony dripped from the air like stale beer at a dive bar. He found himself fighting not for glory or honor, but for the simple promise of a future that felt tantalizingly out of reach. With the weight of love and loss crashing together, he clung to hope as fragile, yet formidable as a fragile peace treaty. Bracing himself for whatever came next, his battle for survival, after all, had become a battle for love. The sun peered through the clouded sky like a timid child, unsure if it should make an entrance after the tumult of battle. Thomas leaned against the jagged edge of a war-torn wall, the remnants of a once vivid landscape now reduced to mud and despair. His heart raced, not from the thunder of cannon fire, which had mercifully quieted, but from the way the lingering scent of gunpowder mixed with the dampness of the earth. He had survived. A flickering flame within him stirred back to life, fueled not just by the adrenaline of combat, but by the tender memories of Alinor's sweet words folded into letters that lay heavy in his pocket, like banners of hope waving against the encroaching shadows of hopelessness. To be alive in this fractured world felt almost surreal. A plot twist so unexpected that even the best Hollywood scriptwriters would raise their quills in admiration. Evacuation was a cacophony of shouts and chaos, but all Thomas could hear were the whispers of Alinor's laughter echoing in his mind. Each jolt of the transport reminded him of her soft hand resting on his during quieter moments, a grounding reminder amidst the crumbling reality around him. As the vehicle lurched toward home, he closed his eyes and envisioned her in that sun-drenched garden, where daisies danced in the breeze and hope blossomed with each petal. His companions, fellow soldiers with dirt smeared across their weary faces, traded war stories filled with dark humor. But Thomas's heart skipped a beat with thoughts of returning to the embrace of the very woman who had sent him off with her blazing faith. If this were a film, their reunion would be scored with a vintage love song climbing to a crescendo. But alas, the soundtrack of his life was far less organized, more like jazz gone wrong, with soldiers landing offbeat. Home was both a sanctuary and a strange, unfamiliar land. The first whiff of fresh bread wafted through the air, a welcome balm for his scarred senses, though it felt like a distant memory of peace from a lifetime ago. What was once ordinary now seemed exceptional. The wooden floorboards groaned beneath his boots, each creak calling out stories of warmth and laughter that fell silent during the war's long winter. And there, under the arch of the doorway, stood Alina, her radiant smile cutting through the shadows that clung to Thomas's heart like stubborn cobwebs. The moment their eyes locked, it was as if the world fell silent, leaving only the rustle of leaves whispering secrets about love, undeterred by the ravages of war. The embrace they shared was fierce and trembled with unspoken words, a connection woven tighter than the fabrics of the military uniforms that once separated them. As they pulled apart, Thomas noticed that Alina's eyes sparkled with both relief and the tears of dreams deferred. "You wrote me like every day was a new episode of Days of Our Lives," he teased, his voice cracking under the emotional weight, earning a smile and an eye roll from Alina. But in that exchange, he realized the letters were not just ink on paper. They were lifelines thrown across the chasm of fear and uncertainty, a beacon guiding him back homeward like some romantic GPS that never really got you lost. Their love had survived the relentless storm, forged in the fires of sacrifice and loyalty, now sprinkling magic dust over the awkwardness of a war-weary reunion. With each day that passed under the cozy roof of their shared home, the couple began the laborious yet exhilarating work of rebuilding their lives together. As if piecing a jigsaw puzzle back together after it had been dumped out on the floor, stories of the battlefield softened as they shared laughter over dinner, the scent of home-cooked meals filling the air, pushing back the memory of smoke and sorrow. Together, they ventured into the future hand in hand, Thomas, his scars reminding him of what had been endured, and Alina, her unwavering spirit stitching together the fabric of newfound hope. The memories of war would always shape him, lurking like imagery in a faded photograph. But now they were merely shadows behind the resplendent light of possibility. In this world reborn from the ashes of battle, every corner held a promise, every moment a chance to reclaim joy, and they were determined to seize it, no matter the odds. As dawn broke over the opulent kingdom of Eldoria, the sun kissed the grand towers of the palace, casting golden hues onto the marble floors. Queen Isolde sat in her lavish chamber, quill dancing over parchment, her ink flowing like the rich chocolate she craved. She penned her innermost thoughts, weaving her dreams of gallivanting barefoot through fields of wildflowers, free from the suffocating silk of her royal gowns. Outside her window, the melodious chirping of birds acted as a siren call, yet her heart ached for the thrill of adventure and the tender embrace of love, neither of which were comfortably compatible with the responsibilities draped upon her shoulders like an unwelcome cloak. Ah, if only my life were a Netflix series where I could skip to the good parts, she mused, chuckling to herself amidst the weight of her regal duties. Meanwhile, deep in the shadowy corners of the palace, her devoted counselor, Eric, paced with the intensity of a caffeinated squirrel. Equipped with a mind sharper than the finest sword and instincts that had weathered many a storm, he sensed the approaching clouds of war from the rival kingdom of Vorath, looming like dark thunderheads ready to unleash chaos. The air was thick with tension, a mixture of damp stone and blossoming roses, as Eric made his way through the opulent halls where chandeliers sparkled like the glint in a bookish character's glasses. Each corner he turned, he envisioned the worst and how he might protect the queen, as though he were a knight from a long-forgotten legend rather than a mere advisor. Surely, Isolde couldn't want to plunge into chaos with a rival kingdom when there are so many pastries to enjoy, he thought, shaking his head, half amused and half anxious. Queen Isolde closed her diary, letting out a sigh that felt like the weight of her crown's jewels, crafting their own gravitational pull. The clash of swords in practice drills outside reminded her of the dissonance in her heart. She was a ruler in a world of swords and shields, yet her spirit longed for harmony and romance, perhaps akin to the epic tales of knights rescuing fair maidens. But here she was a single instigator of peace, compelled to snuff the embers of discord threatening her beloved realm. With a resigned glance over her shoulder toward her impressive yet confining chambers, the opulence felt more like imprisonment. Being a queen sometimes feels less like ruling and more like, well, being in an eternal game of chess with no end in sight, she murmured, her voice laced with irony, as she missed the thrill of simply being alive. Eric burst into the queen's chamber, a fervent storm of urgency tempered by his genuine love for Isolde, like a concerned dad at a school play. He presented her with maps etched in elaborate designs, taking great care not to smudge the intricate details with the crumbs from his hastily consumed breakfast roll. Your Majesty, the rumors from Vorath are becoming more than just tavern gossip. We must act before they turn into a scary movie with the same tone as a bad sequel. Nobody wants that. Despite his seriousness, there was a glimmer of humor in his eyes, but Isolde could see the strain beneath the laughter. The acrid scent of fear laced the air, and his worry churned like a pot of boiling milk, potentially leaving the realm without a leader if things went awry. As the sun climbed higher, casting beams of warmth across Eldoria, Isolde felt the chasm between her desires and her duties widen, like a stretch of land between two feuding kingdoms, with every line arcing gracefully across her diary. She realized that freedom and love may come at great peril, but sometimes, to save the future, one must risk everything in the now. With a renewed sense of determination, she stood tall, her crown shimmering more brilliantly than any warrior's blade. If we are to dance through war, then I shall lead with courage, even if I trip over my own feet, she proclaimed, her heart racing with both anxiety and thrill at the thought. Unbeknownst to her, the world of Eldoria thrummed with the promise of challenges ahead, even as the dawn of her own hidden desires awaited to make their bold entrance. In the heart of the palace, the air was thick with the lingering scents of roasted meats and spiced wines, masking the darker currents swirling beneath the surface. Queen Isolde, with hair the color of sunlit honey, roamed the marble halls like a spirit lost in her own domain. She yearned for connection, desperately seeking to bridge the chasm that had formed between the crown and the people. The laughter of children echoed outside, a bittersweet reminder of the joy that eluded her as she pondered the whispers of her court, hints of discontent weaving through the fabric of her once unshakable reign. Little did she know, danger lurked in shadows, donning the familiar guise of trusted faces, ready to turn her desire for connection into a weapon of betrayal. As the torches flickered in the dim light of her chambers, the harsh truth began to dawn on her. Queen Isolde confided in Eric, a loyal knight with eyes that gleamed like polished onyx, whose sturdy presence was often the balm to her tumultuous thoughts. Together they pored over the parchment, its ink barely dry with plots thick enough to choke a dragon. Eric's brows knitted together, his voice low and steady, as he whispered of murmurs seeping from the very heart of her council. Lord Narvon, he said, the name dripping with distrust. He's weaving a tapestry of deceit, a web that could ensnare even the sharpest of minds. The revelation struck Isolde like a cold slap to the face, her heart quickening in a frenzy of betrayal and anger. How could someone who feigned loyalty for so long harbor such venomous intentions? She imagined Narvon, his slicked back hair like an oil slick, grinning behind closed doors, plotting under the guile of night, while she strolled through the fragrant gardens, unaware. The cauldron of her mind bubbled with feelings ignited by the potential loss of her power, a heady mix of fear and fury. Yet there was an irony tangled within her disaster, for in seeking to connect with her people, she had unwittingly peeled back the layers of her own court's treachery, a classic case of be careful what you wish for. As the moon cast its silver glow through the tall Gothic windows, Isolde's heart drummed a rebellious beat within her chest. She could feel the chill of isolation creeping in like a forgotten ghost, threatening to envelop her reign in a shroud of darkness. Yet, amidst this brewing storm, she felt an undeniable spark ignite within her spirit, a warrior queen awakening from the slumber of complacency. The conspirators would soon learn that a mother bear does not take kindly to anyone threatening her cubs, and if betrayal was a game of chess, then she had a few tricks up her sleeve that would make even the most cunning of players reconsider their calculated moves. With determination etched onto her features, Isolde resolved to turn the tables, to unearth the secrets hidden in her court's shadowy corners. She would become the storm, a tempest willing to blow away the cobwebs of deceit and defend her sovereignty with ferocity. The air crackled around her, a mix of resolve and the pungent sweetness of freshly picked jasmine from the gardens below mingling with the underlying scent of treachery. The stakes were high, but then again, when aren't they in the Game of Thrones, with every heartbeat resonating like a battle cry? Queen Isolde prepared to don the mantle of her own fate, ready to confront the whispering conspirators and reclaim her kingdom from the brink of betrayal. In the flickering candlelight of her chamber, Isolde clutched a richly adorned letter. It sent a blend of lavender and ink. It bore the elegant script of Leon, a striking nobleman from the rival kingdom, his words painting pictures of a world far removed from the cold stone walls of her castle. Each stroke of his pen sent shivers down her spine, igniting a fire within her heart that she had long thought extinguished. Oh, how ironic it was that mere paper could stir such passion, like a rogue magician casting a spell in the dark. Yet in those charged moments, Isolde dared to dream of moonlit escapes. As her heart savored the sweet taste of forbidden love that lingered in the air like the heavy perfume of ripe apples. Meanwhile, the walls of the castle echoed with the distant clanging of metal, the sounds of knights training, unaware of the fragile balance hanging by a thread. Eric, steadfast in his loyalty to both the crown and his dear friend, paced the stone corridors, his mind racing like a battle charger refusing to be tamed. The notion of Isolde's dalliance ignited not just concern, but a near panic. What is she thinking? He muttered under his breath, wrestling with the knowledge that each stolen moment between Isolde and Leon could very well serve as kindling for the fires of war. It was a dramatic, perilous game they played, but unlike the throne's grand strategies, this was all heart-tangled, passionate, and terribly risky. As letters flew between Isolde and Leon, their clandestine romance blossomed like poison ivy, beautiful but lethal. Each parchment was a dagger, slicing through her fealty to the kingdom, as well as the rules that bound her to duty. Often she would nestle in her favorite quiet spot, a secluded alcove bursting with the sweet scent of honeysuckle, her heart racing as she read and reread the promises Leon wrote with devotion. With every declaration of love, the shadows around her whispered that her secret was a double-edged sword, sharp enough to cut through the bonds of loyalty and innocence. Yet her heart, a foolish poet, danced to the rhythm of risk, ignoring the warnings like a child at a fair, eyes wide open, craving one more ride on the dangerous carousel of love. Eric's frustration bubbled like a pot left unattended over an open flame. Choosing words carefully, he approached Isolde, his eyes burning with concern and determination. "You play with fire, Isolde," he exclaimed, unleashing his worries like a gushing river. This love with Leon could ignite a conflict that makes dragonfire look like a camp lantern. He sought to jolt her from the daydreams of grandeur she entertained, yet Isolde, her cheeks flushed with the thrill of romance, merely laughed it off, captivated by the shimmering allure of love's deception, blithely dismissing the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. All the while, the kingdom held its breath, quietly balancing on the delicate thread of love, power, and treachery. Isolde's heart, caught between two worlds, desperately sought the warmth of Leon's affection, while Eric fought valiantly to win her back to reason. As she penned yet another note to Leon, she could almost hear the distant drums of war, rising like a clamor in the background of this farcical play. They were all unwittingly cast in. Would she forsake her crown and duty for amorous rendezvous? And could love flourish in the shadows, or was it destined to spoil like forgotten fruit, leaving only chaos in its wake? The curtain was about to rise on a drama that would change the fate of a dynasty. The castle, usually a bastion of joy and laughter, was cloaked in an unsettling hush as guests adorned in sumptuous fabrics swirled about the grand hall. Bright banners that once fluttered cheerily now drooped, as if sensing the dark undercurrents stirring beneath the surface. The sound of clinking goblets and raucous laughter masked whispers that slithered like serpents among the merrymakers. Queen Isolde, with her crown slightly askew from the weight of festivity, sensed a tension thicker than the rich stew simmering in the kitchens. Lord Narvon, a man with all the charm of a polished rat, eyed her with the kind of intensity that promised mischief, plotting revenge while feigning delight. If you could smell treachery, it would have reeked like burnt fish on that fateful evening, and on the lips of the revelers there was an irony. The very celebration that was meant to honor her was a mere mask for impending chaos. As shadows flickered against the stone walls, Lord Narvan revealed his scheming plot. A coup cloaked in layers of deceit thicker than the icing on a poorly baked royal birthday cake. Suddenly, the joyous strains of the musicians turned sour, discord spilling from their instruments like a poorly timed punchline. With one swift betrayal, Narvan's allies surged, armed with knives that glimmered like hungry stars drawn toward the night. Queen Isolde, heart pounding like a war drum, found her world shake as she stood upon the precipice of a revolution. It felt much like a bad reality show where the twists just kept coming, each more outrageous than the last. Her throne seemed to waver as she grasped the gravity of her predicament. A choice between her love for the noble Leon and her duty to a kingdom hanging by a thread. The chaos erupted like a firework gone haywire, vibrant flashes against the grim backdrop of betrayal. Commanding shouts underscored the confusion, while the air thickened with cries, and the mingled sense of sweat and fear, as if the very fabric of loyalty was tearing apart. Isolde's heart was a battle drum, pounding the rhythm of desperation. As she scanned the scene, she could see Leon's fierce determination, a flicker of battle-ready valor igniting his eyes. But could love quell the flames of insurrection? Before her, two paths stretched wide as the ocean, one leading to a potential escape with Leon, freedom tinged with the stench of revolution. The other, a heavy duty to uphold the sacred reign of her ancestors, albeit with an even heavier heart. Choosing duty shattered her heart, but resolve gathered around her like storm clouds as she grasped her crown. The cold metal, a stark reminder of her responsibility. Within her chest, love pulsed heavily alongside her lineage, and irony nestled within her heart like a troublesome little imp. The scent of iron and smoke curled into her nostrils as she fought her way to the fray, each swing of her blade an embodiment of her struggle. Like a phoenix, she resolved to rise, ash-stained, yet noble. Opponents clashed around her, swords singing through the air in a discordant symphony of defiance and survival, each note vibrating with consequences. And for a fleeting moment, Isolde felt it, an intoxicating blend of rage and courage as she carved out not just a space for her kingdom, but a place for her love in the heart of warfare. As the echoes of battle hung in the air like the last notes of a lamenting bard, Queen Isolde discovered that her kingdom was not merely a title or a throne. It was alive, a breathing entity infused with the dreams and desires of its people. Each heartbeat woven into her own. With every strike against her usurpers, she realized that the true siege was upon her spirit, a contest between forsaken aspirations and soaring hopes. The day would soon break, and even in that darkness, glimmers of light danced on the horizon, igniting a fierce determination within her. Perhaps, she mused amid the chaos, rebellion and love did not have to remain enemies. Perhaps they could intertwine like the roots of an ancient oak, fierce yet yielding. And as a bold roar erupted from her lips, the battlefield transformed from a scene of despair to one of undeniable hope. And so the queen took her stand, not just for her throne, but for the love that dared to defy destiny. With a triumphant heart throbbing in her chest, Isolde surveyed the remnants of betrayal scattered like autumn leaves across her court. Her once lush palace, echoing with the whispers of treachery, now stood resolute, a fortress against the shadows that had threatened to devour her reign. The smell of damp stone, mixed with fragrant cooking from the kitchens, filled her nostrils as she strode confidently through the grand hallways, determination lighting her path like the golden sun rising over the tumultuous sea. It was a new dawn, and she, the queen, was ready to wield her power with the finesse of a master swordsmith, ensuring that her desires would no longer only orbit around self-interest, but expand to encompass the very soul of Eldoria itself. The throne awaited with all its sparkling opulence, yet Isolde had no intention of simply plopping down onto the cushion of authority like an overripe fruit. Instead, she felt the reassuring weight of her crown, a tangible reminder of the people who relied on her, just as the mighty elks grazed peacefully in the glades of Eldoria. She realized it was time to shepherd her people toward prosperity through the formidable power of diplomacy. With a flicker of mischief in her eye, she recalled tales of her mother, whose charm could bend even the most stubborn of lords. Diplomacy would not be a tedious chore, but a dance, a lively jig across the court of Leon's kingdom. The very dance that might just rekindle the ancient bond woven between their realms. As she penned her thoughts into the diary that had become her confidant, her inner sanctum, it smelled of leather and ink, punctuated by the musky fragrance of age-old secrets. Each word emerged like a vibrant brushstroke on a canvas of destiny, hinting at a love that could stretch across borders, a bond capable of thawing the frost left from past rivalries. Suddenly, the notion of a royal alliance didn't seem so much like a mundane chess game, but rather a delightful sprinkling of sugar over the bitter coffee of history. Isolde let out a soft laugh, picturing herself and Leon exchanging banter beneath the twinkling stars. They would not simply unite. Oh no, they would build a legacy steeped in laughter, shared meals, and the kind of love that could bloom in the ashes of discord. However, royal life seldom unfolds like fairy tales, complete with magic wands and charming princes. The sound of her advisers arguing over treaties filled the air, blending with the clatter of plates and the rustling of silk, a discordant symphony that reminded Isolde of those riddling puzzles she loved to solve as a child. She rolled up her sleeves, not literally, of course. Who wants to risk getting ink on those delicate linen sleeves? And braced herself for the negotiations ahead. Gut instinct told her to infuse every discussion with humor. After all, wouldn't it be amusing to tease a stuffy lord about his musty old armor as they ironed out alliances? The realization struck her that both wit and wisdom might just charm the iron hearts of her contemporaries, transforming stubbornness into the warm glow of camaraderie. As she concluded her latest entry, the flickering candlelight cast whimsical shadows against the parchment, and Isolde felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation swirling within her. The throne felt sturdier beneath her, as if it had absorbed her newfound resolve, ready to launch Eldoria into an era painted in bright hues of unity and shared purpose. For her diary, once a mere vessel of hidden thoughts, had now become a flag emblematic of her dreams, aspirations, and the laughter she yearned to share with her people. And the kingdom of Leon, with one last stroke of her quill, sealing her intentions and desires, Isolde's heart danced in rhythm with destiny, ready to greet this dazzling new dawn hand in hand with the world beyond her castle walls. Beneath the sun-drenched skies of ancient Alexandria, where the air shimmered with the scent of freshly baked bread, and the salty tang of the nearby sea, lived Lysandra, a scholar with an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Her days were spent in the dimly lit corners of the great library, poring over scrolls, her fingers stained with the ink of 1,000 ancient writers. With her hair cascading like an inkwell waterfall and eyes sharp enough to cut through the fluff of philosophical nonsense, she was both revered and ridiculed in equal measure. Noblemen and scholars whispered her name behind closed doors, debating whether her dedication to the universe's secrets was brilliance or madness, a bit like debating whether pineapple belongs on pizza, though no one dared to ask her that aloud. Little did she know, her life was about to receive an unexpected plot twist worthy of an epic saga. And here enters our dashing hero, Cassian, the charming rebel with a penchant for mischief, and stirring the pot, or rather, the cauldron of revolution. Cassian strutted through the busy marketplace, a place alive with the raucous sounds of merchants haggling and children laughing, while the warm breeze carried hints of spices from faraway lands. He was the spark in the tinderbox of society, a handsome rogue with a purpose, albeit a bit reckless and prone to getting his robe snagged on cartwheels. His eyes gleamed as he skimmed the shelves of the library, hunting for knowledge to fuel his dreams of a better world. And it was on one fateful day that his gaze landed on Lysandra's scroll, a vibrant tapestry of letters and symbols that danced before him like an unsolved puzzle. With a brilliant stroke of luck or mischief, he discovered a hidden code within her text, a key to unlock mysteries that could potentially overthrow the oppressive forces keeping their city in chains. As he reached the end of the script, an electric thrill coursed through him. Somehow, this discovery was destined to intertwine their fates, like two mismatched socks that actually belonged together. When Cassian approached Lysandra, he wasn't prepared for the fiery intellect that greeted him. Her sharp smiles and sarcastic barbs cut just as deep as any dagger. You have the audacity to meddle in my work, and yet your reason for it seems as bright as a candle in a hurricane, she teased. Her eyebrow arched with the weight of unspoken challenge, yet there was an undeniable chemistry between them, a magnetic pull that felt more potent than the smelly fish being sold nearby. As they cracked the encrypted letters together, deciphering ancient secrets mixed with each shared look, the atmosphere subtly shifted from scholarly to something more intoxicating, a mix of admiration and wild attraction, as tangible as the scent of jasmine wafting in the twilight. It was as if they had stumbled into their own rom-com, directed by the likes of a time-traveling Shakespeare, with a heart full of rebellion and hidden agendas. But of course, the universe, in its infinite wisdom, decided to throw a wrench, or perhaps a cursed scroll, into their blissfully chaotic romance. Their clandestine meetings in shadowy library corners were as thrilling as riding a chariot with wheels made of butter. Every rustle of parchment sent their hearts racing. Each lingering glance threatened to ignite a firestorm in their respective hearts. And yet, lurking just beyond their blossoming affection, was the oppressive weight of societal rules. Whispering nobles and prying eyes threatened to shred their love story before it even had a chance to take root. Like that annoying pop-up ad that you can't scroll past, every stolen moment became both a treasure and a ticking clock, echoing the urgency of their mission to decode the truth hidden in those letters. While unknown dangers loomed on the horizon like villains out of a mythic tale, eager to snuff out the light of rebellion, clinging to hope and the sweet taste of adventure, they wondered, could love truly thrive amidst chaos, or was it just a fleeting mirage, luring them to their own undoing? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, Lysandra and Cassian found themselves at a crossroads, both in their quest and in their hearts. They stood beneath the grand columns of the library, a silent witness to to their burgeoning bond, contrasted against the backdrop of weary, watchful gods who seemed amused by the antics of mere mortals, with one hand clutching the scroll that contained the key to their future, and the other held tightly in Cassian's. Lysandra felt the rush of possibility swirl around them, like petals caught in a whirlwind. Humor turned to seriousness as they devised a plan, a resonance of determination filling the air. With each letter they decoded, they edged closer to unlocking not just the secrets of the universe, but the very chains that confined their hearts. Yes, perhaps their romance was as unconventional as having a pet rock. Yet, in the face of revolution, it stood to be the most powerful code of all, one that could rewrite the fabric of their history and change their world forever. In the dimly lit corridors of the Grand Library, where the scent of aged paper mingled with the mustiness of forgotten tomes, Lysandra and Cassian found solace amid the whispers of rival scholars. Their connection grew stronger, woven together by shared glances over intricate ciphers and the crackling energy of unspoken words. However, lurking just outside their sanctuary were envious eyes, watching like hawks, ready to swoop down at the first sign of vulnerability. Indeed, the instant those scheming scholars caught wind of their alliance, the air thickened with tension, thick enough to slice with a parchment knife. It was as if the universe had conspired to challenge their resolve. After all, who could concentrate on ancient codes with betrayal lurking around every corner? On the bustling streets beyond the library, the atmosphere crackled with a different kind of tension, the nation's brewing unrest. The voices of the common folk rose like a stormy tide, chanting for change against the iron grip of their ruling authorities. Cassian felt the weight of his role as a scholar heavy on his shoulders, knowing well how the pursuit of truth could lead one down perilous paths. Each time he caught a glimpse of the fiery rebellion taking shape among the masses, it struck a chord in his heart. His empathy swayed like a pendulum between academic integrity and moral duty. With a mind consumed by ideals of justice and freedom, how could he remain a mere observer when history beckoned him to act like a hero in a cheesy blockbuster film? Meanwhile, Lysandra stood at the precipice of her own crisis. Her heart raced like a warhorse as rival scholars began to murmur accusations, questioning whether her collaboration with Cassian compromised her long-respected scholarly integrity. The betrayal felt like a slap, each whisper echoing like a pebble dropped into a still pond, rippling outward with potential damage. She could practically taste the bitterness in the air, thick as molasses. The flavor of doubt clung to her tongue, and she longed to wipe it away. Yet, resolute as a knight facing down a dragon, Lysandra vowed not to let their petty jealousy deter her from unlocking the secrets of the code, nor dim the bright force of her burgeoning love for Cassian. After all, she wasn't in this for the accolades. She was in it for the truth, and for him. Under the suffocating weight of societal expectations, each interaction between Cassian and Lysandra crackled with a strange mix of passion and danger, like a live wire that could incinerate them whole. They stole moments together amid the labyrinthine stacks, whispering fervent dreams and plotting their next steps, while the shadows of judgment lurked like persistent pests. On one occasion, amid the crumbling scrolls, their hands brushed, a spark igniting beneath their fingertips, setting off a cascade of possibilities. If only their love could drive the forces of jealousy and suspicion away, as swiftly as a swoosh of a magician's wand. Yet this was not a fairy tale, and their happiness felt precarious, resting on the razor's edge between revelation and ruin. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the library's marble floor, Cassian and Lysandra leaned in closer, their breaths mingling as they pored over the tantalizing riddle that lay before them. What mysteries would they uncover, and what sacrifices would they have to make? Could they truly unravel the code that shimmered with the promise of truth, like the last glimmers of sunlight dappling through the trees? Together, they stood on the brink of discovery, a united front against the creeping darkness of betrayal and unrest. With camaraderie pulsating in their veins, they braced themselves for whatever lay ahead, ready to face the trials of their revolutionary love, knowing that each peril they faced only deepened the unwritten bonds that had blossomed between their hearts. In the dimly lit corners of the ancient library, dust motes danced through beams of sunlight, illuminating Lysandra's frantic scribbles. She held the fabled code in her hands, a parchment that pulsed with secrets thick enough to choke on. The air smelled of old paper and trepidation as she deciphered lines that seemed to vibrate with potential. This could either heal us or plunge our world into chaos, she muttered, her voice barely a whisper against the haunting echoes of history. Little did she know, the fragile equilibrium of their society hung by a thread, and the next turn of phrase could either spark a revolution or ruin everything she held dear. Just as Lysandra started to grasp the exhilarating weight of the truth, betrayal struck like a forked lightning bolt, the kind that makes your hair stand on end and your stomach drop. Cassian, her stalwart ally and clandestine love interest, suddenly embodied the villain in a tragic tale. It seemed that while she diligently unearthed facts and figures, others schemed to use the code as a weapon, greedily lapping up power like thirsty dogs at a water bowl. The tension screamed louder than a stadium full of fans at a championship game. and Lysandra felt the stirrings of doubt coil tightly around her heart. Was the man who championed freedom merely wielding a sword for his own glory? Or did he truly share her vision for a brighter tomorrow? The clash of ideals erupted into the open air like a volcano spewing ash and chaos. As Cassion's charismatic fervor for rebellion collided squarely with Lysandra's principled stance on knowledge and integrity, as the wind whipped through their encampment, casting a haunting sound akin to a mournful wail, their dialogue volleyed back and forth, punctuated by sharp breaths and sharp words. "You're not just fighting the system, you're fighting yourself," she exclaimed, the frustration tangible like the smell of burnt toast left too long in the oven. Lysandra felt the weight of 1,000 expectations crush down on her shoulders, while Cassion's face turned a mask of determined passion, his eyes glinting with fervent demand for change. Who knew love could feel like being caught in a high-stakes chess match, each piece a moral dilemma placed on a board of conflicting desires. As the stakes boiled over, the tension within their once unbreakable bond began to fracture, sending echoes of disbelief through the rebels and intellectuals alike. The air hung heavy with the scent of sweat, smoke, and the impending doom of indecision, a cocktail that would make even the most seasoned of bartenders wary. Both Lysandra and Cassion faced a moment of digestive discomfort, filled with angst that could curdle milk and ruin picnics for miles. Yet, amid the chaos, a fierce love smoldered like a hidden ember, urging them to reconsider what they truly wanted from life and from one another. In that moment, at the crossroads of loyalty and ambition, their hearts beat like drums in a war dance, each thud a reminder of possibilities, both sweet and sour. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting fiery hues across the land, Lysandra and Cassion stood at a precipice, the weight of choices pressing down like a heavy cloak. Their world could unfurl like a flower in bloom, or collapse in a heap of wilted dreams and half-toasted marshmallows. With trembling hands, they realized the truth. Love was not just about the grand gestures, but also about the quiet decisions made in the shadows. In the fading light, they faced each other, the beat of differing paths pulsating between them, both knowing deep down that the fate of their society and their hearts loomed just beyond the horizon. The choice lay before them, glistening like a beacon and just as treacherous, and it was now or never to forge a love that defied even the most daunting of codes. The air crackled like a nerves-packed thunderstorm as Lysandra and Cassion stood at the edge of the derelict courtyard. The crumbling stones littered with the debris of lost dreams. Shadows danced in the flickering torchlight, their enemies lurking just beyond the perimeter like hungry wolves in a forest of doubt. Their hearts raced, a drumbeat echoing the pulse of the city around them, where the scent of wet earth mingled with the faint tang of blood from past battles. Without the code, they had been mere rebels now, armed with truths that hissed like steam escaping a boiling kettle. They held the power to ignite hope or plunge it into chaos. Do you remember the time when life threw you something unexpected and messy? Yeah, this felt roughly like that, but with swords and emotional baggage to boot. As Lysandra's fingers brushed against the parchment, inked with the revelations they had painstakingly unraveled, her mind simmered with the weight of it all. Their plan was nothing short of a revolution, perfect for a city like Alexandria, where whispers could spark wildfires. The words glowed in her imagination like neon signs on a darkened street, suggesting freedom and resurgence, yet also a far too heavy choice. Love or legacy. Cashin, his gaze fierce and passionate, felt the tension thrumming through him like the strings of a lone lute in an empty tavern, echoing promises unspoken while tugging at the frayed edges of his heart. He turned to Lysandra, the sweet scent of her hair mingling with adrenaline as they locked eyes, and the gravity of the moment surged through them like a jolt of electricity on a stormy night. Suddenly, a shadow split the darkness apart, cutting through their rising tension like a hot knife through butter. From the gloom emerged Amina, an enigmatic figure draped in layers of mystery and cloaked in rebellion. Her presence brought a waft of sandalwood, mingled with the dampened odor of travel, her eyes glinting with the promise of unexpected alliances. You didn't think you'd get to this point without a little help, did you? She quipped, her voice like silk against ashes, the irony not lost in the air charged with suspense. The plot thickened, almost like one of those cheesy soap operas where everyone assumes the world revolves around melodrama. But the stakes were too high for theatrics now. They had finally found the ally they didn't know they needed. As Amina laid out her connection to the network of dissenters buzzing beneath Alexandria's surface, hope swirled among them like a refreshing breeze, breaking through the oppressive heat of a summer afternoon. The trio gathered around the glowing parchment, their shadows merging and mingling. Even as they grappled with the forces that had long kept them apart, fear, uncertainty, and, let's be real, some awkward feelings, much like that moment when you agreed to take the last slice of pizza, but realize it's a shared love of 80s movies driving the decision. They recognized that choosing each other could allow for a greater purpose. The code wasn't just about revolution. It became a metaphor for their intertwining destinies, a poetic phrase waiting to be unleashed upon a world ripe for change. But amidst the fervor, Cashin's heart trembled like a quaking leaf on a windy day, torn between the enormity of their mission and his desire to grasp Lysandra firmly, to hold on tight as if she were the last tangible thread of hope left, just when the pressure felt unbearable, and one of them might have had to sacrifice their love on the altar of the greater good. The universe had other plans. With a mischievous grin, Amina conjured a plan that twisted the very fabric of their choices, offering an avenue where love and valor weren't mutually exclusive. Her suggestion danced like stars in the night sky, reflecting the potential of hidden connections they could forge with the people, urging them toward a wave of change that could crash against the city's ancient stones. Lysandra and Cashin, flanked by the unexpected ally, realized they could catalyze a revolution while still holding hands. Who knew history could be so romantic, even when draped in the cloak of rebellion. As they stood together against the backdrop of a city waiting for dawn, laughter bubbled forth unexpectedly, cutting through their grim fears, declaring a new code forged not just in words, but in the bonds of love and sacrifice. As dawn unfurled its golden fingers over Alexandria, the air thrummed with anticipation. The faint scent of incense still clung to the cracks in the cobblestones, mingling with a hint of fresh bread from the nearby bakeries awakening for the day. Amidst the cobblestones painted in hues of orange and pink, Lysandra and Cashin stood upon a precipice of change, the weight of their unveiled code resting in their hearts like a freshly sharpened dagger. It was a code that spoke of rebellion, love, and the undeniable magic that comes when two souls collide in a world that insists they shouldn't. Underneath the dawn's embrace, they could almost taste the sweet tang of revolution in the air, a harbinger of the possibilities lying ahead, as enticing as a ripe fig on the branch, just begging to be plucked. Together, they had weathered countless storms, their love a sturdy ship in rough waters. The bittersweet scent of burnt parchment and ink still lingered from the long nights spent decoding secrets, bonded by their reluctant alliance that had transformed into something much deeper. Every step toward unveiling the truth had been a dance on a tightrope. And yet, here they stood, two figures against the backdrop of a city on the brink of upheaval, flourishing against the odds like wildflowers in a forgotten garden. As the first rays of sun caught the edges of their features, Lysandra caught Cashin's eye and saw that familiar spark, the kind that could light a bonfire on the bleakest of nights. It was more than love. It was a radical act of defiance. To love fiercely when the world told them otherwise. With the rebellion simmering beneath the surface, the streets echoed with the sounds of clashing ideals as people gathered, some drunken on ambition, others high on hope. The murmurs of brave souls resonated like a war drum, urging the crowd like a tidal wave crashing into the shores of their old lives. Each harried step of those congregated was infused with the energy that Lysandra had only ever read about in heroic tales. This was their moment of glory, their personal epic held together by the fabric of unwritten bonds. As the air crackled around them, the distant chant of freedom cut through the morning fog, a battle cry that hung with the weight of history itself. Amidst the chaos, the vibrant laughter of children pierced the seriousness of the moment, comic relief amidst the idealism brewing. A delightful reminder of what all this was truly for. The sun stretched higher, casting a warm glow that painted the faces of the crowd, each individual transformed by the light of change. It was a scene almost too cinematic to believe, reminiscent of those films where the ragtag team rallies against oppressive forces, only with much more shouting and far fewer special effects. Cashin's voice rang out amidst the commotion, declaring promises of solidarity that reverberated through the throng like a sacred oath. And there was Lysandra, standing at his side, not merely an afterthought, but a fierce flame, illuminating the path ahead. Their unwritten bond a script waiting to be lived, not read. The beauty of it all hung thick in the air, a living testament that sometimes love is the fiercest weapon against an iron-fisted regime. No capes or fanciful gadgets required. As the cacophony swelled, Lysandra and Cashin clasped hands, their fingers intertwined like vines, a unification forged in the crucible of struggle. They looked to the horizon, where glimmers of change flickered like the fiery shards of a setting sun, promising a new dawn not just for them, but for the heart of Alexandria itself. With each passing moment, the shroud of oppression began to lift, like the curtains drawn back to reveal a stage set for revolution. The respectful quiet of a new era was upon them, filled with the hopeful whispers of the future, as the city danced on the precipice of something extraordinary. And as the sunlight cascaded over their faces, they felt the undeniable truth held in the boundless future before them. Bonds written in blood and love are the ones that truly stand the test of time. And today, they were ready to write a whole new chapter together.